Alex Kennedy, basketballinsiders.com. He's the managing editor, and a lot of takes on last night's game, Alex. LeBron, sometimes I don't think anybody questions him as an all-time great talent, an all-time great player, but there has always been kind of this, when the lights are really, really, really bright, I don't, know that everybody agrees with their assessment of him there. But last night, that's the kind of game where he just refused to let his team lose, and him and Irving just absolutely makes you think now that, hey, this thing can go back to Oakland.
Yeah, you're right. That's the LeBron I want to see. I tweeted that last night. That's my favorite version of LeBron, whenever he has that look in his eyes and he's dominating and taking the ball to the basket. I know that his abilities, he can rebound, he can, pass the ball, facilitate, defend. He's obviously someone that's very well-rounded and is a triple-double threat every single night. But I like when he's in scoring mode. I think we saw that last night. He was able to get anywhere he wanted on the floor. And some of that was Draymond Green not being on the floor. I think, obviously LeBron would have had a big game either way because he's very hard to contain. But certainly they attacked the basket with Draymond Green not down there, helping Golden State's interior defense. But yeah, I love seeing that from LeBron. I tweeted out last night. It kind of reminded me of whenever Miami and Boston faced off a few years ago, and LeBron had that angry look in his eyes, and you just knew he was going to have a monster game. LeBron's stat line last night and throughout this postseason, it's been amazing. He's been incredible. He really has carried this Cavs team. Fortunately, Kyrie Irving has stepped up as well. This is his third straight game now with 30 points. And he was fantastic last night. For a 24-year-old to be stepping up and playing so well in the NBA Finals, I'm very impressed.
Hey, why don't we get more of that, Alex, that look in his eye that you talk about from LeBron? People accuse him sometimes of not having that hunger.
That's a great question, and that's what's so frustrating. I think that's why, people want to see that LeBron more often, but I just think it's in his nature and it's his preference to be a facilitator and be a passer. I think he believes that his best abilities are his basketball IQ, making the right play, and being a playmaker. There are certain times, certainly in last year's finals and now in elimination games, where he steps up and scores. He has the highest points per game in elimination games in NBA history. So he knows there are certain times when he needs to step up, but it seems like most times his preference is to pass and to, be that good teammate that makes his teammates better. And while, you always want to see a guy make the right basketball play, for someone like LeBron, who is so dominant, who can get to the basket, who can get anywhere really he wants on the floor, I wish we did see that LeBron more often. I want to see him angry. You almost want, one of his teammates to hit him before the game, punch him in the face or something to make him angry. that LeBron, when he gets mad, he shows up, and it's very hard to slow him down. He's so dominant out there. And honestly, I think he kind of, uses up some of the things that are said in the media as fuel too. He and Klay Thompson were kind of going back and forth last night, and Klay had made some comments about LeBron, and I think that fired him up too. So I don't know if it just takes a certain thing to trigger that LeBron, but I certainly wish we saw it more often.
I agree. I mean, I love watching him when he's playing that brand of basketball. When he is, get out of my way, I don't care what happens, I am winning this game and you are not stopping me. That is the guy that I can make an argument for as right up there with the greats of the game, if not. The other nights you're wondering, where's this guy? How come? And it didn't help to have Kyrie with them doing the same thing last night. Where has Kyrie Irving been? Why was he able to have the game that he had last night?
Well, Kyrie Irving is such a guy that, he's a streaky shooter. He's someone that really needs to knock down shots to gain that confidence. And certainly last night his shot was falling. There were a number of times last night where he made ridiculous shots, either finishing at the basket or with a hand in his face. Like I said, he scored, 30 points or more in 3 straight finals games now. So he's played pretty well, but there are times throughout this postseason that he has disappeared, and that's pretty frustrating for the Cavaliers. Because, look, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what LeBron James and Kyrie Irving do. Kevin Love has been inconsistent, and I think we still question his fit with this team. There's no question that, last night he wasn't effective, scoring 2 points. They haven't really figured out how to utilize him the correct way throughout this postseason. So, and then around those guys, you have older veterans, Richard Jefferson. You have guys that, Tristan Thompson, a guy that isn't going to, be a guy that scores a lot of points. So really, it comes down to Kyrie and LeBron. And I think, Kyrie, I think that confidence is there. I think he's winning the point guard matchup against Steph Curry, which is helping. But I think Kyrie's one of those guys that needs to see his shots falling early to have the kind of confidence and swagger for the rest of the game to go out and have that kind of performance.
Alex Kennedy talking with us a little NBA. How about not having Draymond Green last night? How much do you think that played a factor for Golden State?
Well, it was huge on both ends of the floor. Obviously, on defense, I think he would have helped slow down LeBron James and Kyrie Irving potentially. I think the Cavs were able to get to the basket easier, especially once Andrew Bogut went down, because Draymond Green helps their interior defense so much, and then Bogut is a rim protector. So when Golden State, was giving up all those points, I kept thinking Draymond Green being out there right now would certainly help at the post. And then on offense, I think Draymond Green, what he brings to the Warriors is underrated. Not only is he a guy that knocks down open shots, but, he starts fast breaks. He, grabs the rebound and immediately gets out in transition. Very good at outlet passes. And he's a guy that moves the ball around. He finds open shooters, and then when he is open himself, he knocks down open shots. So I think on both ends of the floor, they were certainly missing him. I'm really curious to see what happens next game. I think we're going to see a really fired up Draymond Green come out on Thursday night. He's always fired up, obviously, but I think he's going to want to really have a huge game on Thursday to make up for missing this past game.
Yeah, and, yesterday we were kind of just debating if Golden State was to win last night, who their MVP, who the finals MVP would be, and I don't know that there was a consensus guy. Some would say maybe Iguodala for his defense that he has played again in this series. Last night, they went right after Iguodala. He didn't have the best game last night, but I guess if you can ask the same question, who is and needs to be the guy for Golden State? Because it seems like Curry is just not having he's not having a great finals. It doesn't look like he is locked in this series so far. And he hasn't been locked in a lot the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, outside of that one game, the 38-point game, Steph Curry really hasn't been himself. So I don't think he would win MVP, unless it is just a name recognition thing. If you're looking at, on-court results, I think it comes down to two guys. I think Draymond Green certainly is in the conversation. We saw, his importance last night. He's been so good on both ends of the floor. He had, a few really good games, and he's someone that has filled the stat sheet and done a lot of things that don't show up in the box score, too. One thing I like that the NBA did this year is they released hustle stats and for the postseason, and they haven't done that in the past. But it shows, screens and charges that have been taken and, guys, times that guys have dove for balls. And we've seen Draymond leads almost all those categories. So I think there's a lot of things that are outside the stat sheet that he brings to the table as well. So as of right now, I'd probably say Draymond Green, but I do think you can make the case for Iguodala. His defense has been terrific. There are some possessions where he switches and ends up guarding a point guard, then a forward, then a center, and he does a terrific job against all of them. And then he's done a very good job on offense, too. He's someone that knows his role. Certainly last year, that's why he was able to win Finals MVP, just because, he stepped up offensively a number of games. But his defense, his passing, and his ability to knock down open shots, those things are consistent. He's a very reliable veteran. You always know what you're going to get from him. So I think it's one of those two guys. That's kind of surprising. Entering the series, the top three guys people probably would have predicted are LeBron if the Cavs win, or Steph Curry, Klay Thompson if the Warriors won. But right now I think Draymond and Iguodala are the two guys that are kind of fighting for that award.
Alex Kennedy with us. We're talking NBA, and let's talk Game 6 then. Kevin Love, you mentioned earlier, pretty invisible last night in Game 5. Does Cleveland need him to be a factor moving forward? Do you start him in Game 6?
I wouldn't start him. I would bring him off the bench. I think this Cavs team is better in this series when he's off the bench. I do think long-term they can try to find a way to make this work. They can use him more at the elbows. They can try to make some, post plays for him. But in this series, it's just really difficult to utilize him and get the most out of him because the Warriors go small and there's not really a good matchup for him. So I think that I would bring him off the bench again. Richard Jefferson has been starting whenever Love is off the bench. What you really want from Love in this series is to be a guy that makes excellent outlet passes. That's one of his biggest strengths. He can start fast breaks. He's very good at that. He can knock down open threes. And then you want him rebounding the ball. But he needs to focus on doing those things. But I would do, with the second unit. I would bring him off the bench and start Richard Jefferson.
I'm talking with Alex Kennedy, the managing editor of BasketballInsiders.com. Now, it's interesting because Love came out the other day and he kind of admitted that this has been a tough fit for him here. He's kind of acknowledged that, hey, I was the man in Minnesota. Now I'm the second guy or even the third guy on some nights, and he just seems like he's, you just said you think there is a spot for him to fit in. Is it in this series, though, or is this something they're going to have to work on in the offseason if they even decide to bring him back? Because he seems like he understands, too, that he indicated that this is not the easiest transition, but this is the second year now that he's been here.
Yeah, it's tough. It kind of reminds me of Chris Bosh in Miami, where he had to really change his game completely to fit in there. He was the man in Toronto, and then he changed positions from power forward to center. He became a rim protector, which he hadn't been in the past. He became a three-point shooter, which he hadn't been in the past. He really changed his game completely to fit alongside LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. And unless Kevin Love is going to undergo a similar transition and make those kind of sacrifices, I'm not sure it will work. But I am someone that believes that you shouldn't trade a guy when his value is at an all-time low. I think trying to fix things in this series isn't going to happen. There's not enough time to revamp things and suddenly make Kevin Love a bigger part of the offense and a featured part of the series. I think they need to work on it this offseason, but I would hold on to him. I would not trade him this offseason. I think if you trade him right now, you're basically dumping him and getting limited back in return. You could get something back, but you're not getting as much value as you should. The better option, because they have him on a long-term contract, is bringing him back, hoping he plays well next year, and then if that happens, then your problem is solved. Even if he plays a little better, then his trade value goes up, and you can get some more assets back in return, because they gave up a ton for this guy. Andrew Wiggins is going to be a very special player in Minnesota. They gave up draft picks. I think it makes more sense to hold on to Love and hope this thing can work out and they can find a role for him and he can try to make those sacrifices rather than giving up on him, because I don't think if you give up on him right now, you're going to get a whole lot in return.
By the way, Love will start in Game 6, and that has been announced. So you're right. They're going to try to see if they can get – you said you'd bring him off the bench, but they're going to try to get him involved. Maybe they felt, all right, he came off the bench, and that wasn't the right role for him either. I don't know. He seems like kind of a forgotten and lost man in all this, and you're right. They gave up a ton to get him, and it doesn't seem like whatever he's doing isn't the impact they thought they were going to be getting. The impact they thought they were getting from LeBron and Kyrie came last night. They win 112-97, and here's the interesting thing, though. They've won, twice in Golden State. They're going to have to win a third time there. That's just not feasible, right, Alex? That's just not happening. They're not winning a third time in Oakland in a 2-week span.
It's hard to imagine that happening for sure. This Golden State team at home is just so good. I think it's one of the best fan bases in the NBA, and that building is extremely hard to play in. I talked to a lot of players that have played there during the playoffs, and they say it's ridiculous, the noise level. I do think, it affects the calls somewhat as well, just because the refs, are affected when there's, that kind of fan base and that kind of passion surrounding them. So it's definitely going to be hard. But look, crazier things have happened. 2.5 weeks ago, we were talking about the Warriors season ending. They were down 3-1 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And, we were thinking, okay, there's no way they can beat this Thunder team with how hot they are. So crazier things have happened. You never know. But certainly it's going to be difficult.
November 20th to the 23rd of 2013, the last time that Golden State's lost 3 straight games, by the way. Hey, you mentioned Wiggins. Let's look at some NBA news and the report that the Bulls might be interested in him for Jimmy Butler. Any shot Minnesota pulls the trigger on a deal like that?
Minnesota would love to pull the trigger on a deal like that. I think they would love to bring Jimmy Butler, and I'm not sure Chicago likes that kind of deal. Right now, a ton of teams are calling the Bulls about Jimmy Butler just because, this last season didn't go as planned. So some thought that maybe the Bulls will make some moves, and Butler is their most attractive trade asset. So a lot of teams are calling right now. Minnesota is certainly one of them. They would love to reunite Tom Thibodeau and Jimmy Butler. He would be great with that young core there. But I don't think the Bulls are going to Butler. Actually, it's interesting. At Eurocamp in Italy this past few days, the rumor, that's been going around that executives have been discussing is that the Bulls are much more open to trading Derrick Rose than Jimmy Butler. Rose is someone that's coming up on free agency, and he's mentioned on the record several times that, he's going to explore his options, and he's excited about the cap rising, and that's kind of upset some people in the Bulls organization. So don't be surprised if you hear some Derrick Rose trade rumors very soon, too.
All right. We're talking with Alex Kennedy, the managing editor of BasketballInsiders.com, Alex Kennedy, NBA on Twitter. All right, a couple other draft things. The Sixers worked out Jaylen Brown today. I guess some people would say, what for? They're not going to take him number 1 overall. That would be a real long shot, but I guess that indicates they're doing their due diligence because they could be in play for getting back into the top 5 or so into this draft.
Yeah, you always want to do your due diligence, and I know there's a lot of teams that will work out guys and just have a file on them for later on in their career when they're a free agent or, if they come up in trade rumors. You want to see that guy and meet with him face-to-face, be able to talk to him and get an idea of who he is, what kind of person he is. So a lot of teams do that. If you ever see a workout where it doesn't seem to make sense because that the team's picking a different player or, the player seems like they're out of their range, it can either mean, like you said, that they're trying to trade up or acquire an additional pick to land that player. But sometimes it is just for their own research. Sometimes they do have just a file on every player just so that later down the road, maybe 5, 6, 7 years from now when that guy is a free agent or when his team is looking to trade him, they can go back and say, okay, here's what we saw from him. Here's what our doctor saw. Here's what he said to us during our meeting. Sometimes those kind of workouts and meetings come in hand way later on down the road, years after they even occur.
Alex Kennedy with us. Ben Simmons reportedly will not work out for NBA teams. Now, I guess this is common, right? This is not something that should be a red flag.
I don't think it's a red flag. I think, he knows he's going to be the first pick, I think, so there's no real point in working out. If there was a debate, if this was one of those years where, there was an argument, 1 or 2 or 3 guys were in the mix for the first pick, then sometimes you see a guy work out just to try to solidify themselves. Last year, I think Karl-Anthony Towns worked out for the Timberwolves just because there was so much hype about Jahlil Okafor and then eventually D'Angelo Russell. But I think just because he knows he's the first pick and Brandon Ingram isn't going to be that guy, I think that's why we're seeing him limited right now. His camp has decided not to work him out, but I don't think it's a red flag at all.
Alex Kennedy's with us, and can you talk about your conversation with Okafor? I saw that tweet earlier. Is there any nuggets that you could share with us? You haven't posted it yet, but we're very eagerly awaiting that post.
Wow, give us the goods. Give us the goods. What do you got?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. It goes up today around 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. We talked about a ton of stuff. He talked about, his rookie season, how much he developed and learned from the losses, how he kind of stayed positive. He did tell me that he believes Joel Embiid will play next season, that for everything he's seen from Embiid, he believes Embiid will be on the floor, and he's confident in that. We talked about the trade rumors, and he said that, he heard about them at the All-Star break and at the during the offseason, that, he's aware of them, he reads about them, and he had a conversation with Brett Brown, and Brett basically told him, as long as you're in the NBA, those things are going to happen. Those rumors are going to come up. So he's kind of dealing with those right now. And we also talked about how he's dealing with criticism. And he brought up a good point. He said, he's on Twitter during these NBA finals, and he sees people hating on Steph Curry or hating on LeBron James and saying those guys are terrible. And he said, I'm nowhere near those players in terms of talent. So if those guys get criticized, then, I'm definitely going to get criticized. So I think he's handling everything really well. And I'm excited to post the interview.
Yeah, we're excited to. Now, is it audio or is it? Did you type it out?
It's gonna be typed out. It's gonna be a feature article.
Cool.
I also talked to Quinn Cook, who obviously played with him at Duke, who talks to him on a daily basis. One of his best friends. I talked to a number of NBA centers that defended him about their experience playing against him and what it was like kind of guarding him. And I talked to some people on the coaching staff as well.
Do you get a sense, Alex Kennedy's with us, and that interview will be at basketballinsiders.com, at Alex Kennedy NBA. You can follow him on Twitter to get it. Did you get a sense that Jahlil is happy in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think so. He wants to grow in Philadelphia. I think that he was frustrated with all the losses last year. One thing we kind of focused on in the interview is that, he's never been on a losing team. In third grade, he was winning, championships, and his AAU was always the best team. Then in high school, he wins the national championship. And then in college, he wins the national championship and only lost 4 games. And then now this past year, he loses 72 games. So it was a huge adjustment for him. There's no question about that. And that, definitely bothered him. He's not used to being on losing teams. So there was definitely a transition and adjustment. But I do think he's happy. I think, talking to him about the core and the work he's putting in and the direction of the franchise, he seems excited. We also talked about the number 1 pick that the Sixers have. And, he said that either Ben Simmons or Brandon Ingram would be great. He seems excited about the additions that are going to be coming and the core they have there.
So it sounds like, and this is something that I've been kind of saying over this process, is that guys that are frustrated and kind of not used to losing, that if they are mature players, they will become great players because of this, and that they can see that there is talent joining them, that this is not going to be like this for the long term. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like Jahlil understands that he's got to go through this losing to get to where he ultimately wants, that there is not a shortcut, and he's smart enough to realize we've got a lot coming that is going to help us out.
Right, and I think one thing that's really good about Okafor, too, is, there's some players that would look at the situation and say, okay, I can go put up a bunch of really good numbers and, help my stats and get a big contract. But for Jahlil, he didn't care about his personal stats. He said, I asked him about, posting 17 points per game and being on the all-rookie first team, and, he wasn't satisfied. He wasn't happy at all. He was upset that they lost games. So I think it's always good when you have a guy that is that frustrated about the losses and is focused more on the team success rather than their individual success. But I do agree with you. I think that, they're looking long-term. You don't want guys that, get used to losing and have lost throughout their life but have been, the best player on a losing team. He's someone that's always been a winner, and he expects to be a winner again very soon. And I think he's excited about that talent infusion, so that can happen sooner than later.
All right, Alex Kennedy, we'll leave you with this. Who wins Game 6?
I will say the Warriors. In the beginning of the series, I predicted the Warriors in 6 games, so I'm going to stick with that.
He's Alex Kennedy. Check out basketballinsiders.com for that interview with Jahlil Okafor, and we appreciate the time as always, pal. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Take care.